Howie Roseman has his eyes on another Georgia product, my friend, and this time, the need may be more urgent than you think. The Philadelphia Eagles just landed in the spotlight of a bombshell analysis from Bleacher Report, and the name emerging as a surprise target in the 2026 NFL Draft could be the next piece of a defensive puzzle Roseman has been building for years. We're talking about a position Philadelphia has always prioritized, one that has taken this team to 3 Super Bowls, and that now sits at the center of a strategic decision that goes way beyond this year's draft. But before I tell you the name and explain why this move makes so much sense, if you're a die-hard Eagles fan, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now, because this breakdown is going to show you how Roseman is thinking 2 or 3 years ahead while everyone else is still talking about free agency. It all starts with an article by analyst Alex Ballantyne of Bleacher Report, who published a study identifying the surprise need for every team in the 2026 draft. For the Eagles, the answer was clear: defensive line. And the name that surfaced as the top target was Chrisen Miller, a defensive tackle out of the University of Georgia. That's right, another Bulldog potentially on his way to Philadelphia. Just think about the full scope of what we're talking about here. Over the last 4 NFL drafts, the Eagles selected 4 defensive prospects from Georgia. In 2022, Jordan Davis was taken in the 1st round. In 2023, 2 first-round picks were spent on Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. In 2025, Smail Mondon arrived in the 5th round. Georgia has literally become an extension of the NovaCare complex when it comes to finding defensive talent, and Howie Roseman clearly trusts that university's development process more than any other program in the country. Chrisen Miller enters this draft with interesting credentials. In his last season at Georgia, he recorded 23 combined tackles, including 4 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks. The production numbers themselves aren't explosive, but his physical profile and developmental potential are exactly what's catching analysts' attention. Mel Kiper Jr. of ESPN ranked Miller as the 3rd best defensive tackle available on his 2026 NFL Draft Big Board. That puts Miller squarely on the radar for first-round consideration for any team with a need along the interior defensive line. NFL.com. Analyst Lance Zierlein described Miller as an even front nose tackle with the ability to gain early advantages at the point of attack, with solid awareness of play design and the hustle to squeeze run lanes across gaps. Zierlein acknowledged that Miller still needs to add bulk and build consistency, but projected him as a player capable of becoming a solid NFL starter over time. Not the kind of prospect who dominates from day one, but exactly the kind of player Howie Roseman loves to develop inside Philadelphia's defensive system. And here's where it gets even more interesting, my friend. What makes Miller such a natural fit in Philadelphia isn't just the Georgia connection. It's how closely his developmental profile mirrors what Jordan Davis looked like coming out of college. Davis was never projected as a high-motor pass rusher. He was a space eater, a run stuffer, a player whose value lived in the trenches on early downs. The Eagles took him, developed him, and he became the anchor of one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. If Roseman sees something similar in Miller, a young, coachable interior lineman who can be molded inside Vic Fangio's system, then this pick makes complete sense as a long-term investment, regardless of what happens at the other tackle spots in 2027. Now let's zoom out even further and talk about the bigger picture of what Vic Fangio's defense actually demands from its interior linemen, because this context matters a lot when evaluating Miller as a fit. Fangio has built his entire defensive philosophy around controlling the line of scrimmage first. His system asks defensive tackles to hold 2 gaps, absorb double teams, and free up linebackers to flow freely to the ball. That's not a glamorous role. It doesn't generate massive sack numbers or highlight real moments, but it is the engine that makes the entire defense run. Jordan Davis has thrived in that role precisely because he was built for it. And if Miller can develop into a player who fills that same function, eating blocks, commanding attention from the center and guard simultaneously, and creating clean lines for Zach Bond and Jihad Campbell to operate behind, then his value to this defense goes far beyond what his college stats might suggest on the surface. And that's exactly where the story gets even more compelling. Why would the Eagles be targeting a defensive tackle when Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Moro Ojomo already form one of the youngest and most dangerous trios at that position in the entire league? The answer lies in the brutal math of the NFL's salary cap. Davis just signed a 3-year, $78 million extension with the Eagles, locking the nose tackle into Philadelphia for the foreseeable future. But Carter and Ojomo? Both are headed to free agency in 2027. And that's where the problem begins. Jalen Carter is, without exaggeration, one of the most dominant defensive tackles of the new generation in the NFL. Spot Rack projects Carter will command somewhere around $84 million on a 4-year extension when the time comes to negotiate. That's not an impossible number to absorb on its own. But when you stack that alongside Davis's $78 million and the potential $20+ million per year that Moro Ojomo could demand if he puts together another dominant season, the Eagles' cap space simply cannot accommodate all three pieces at once. According to analyst John McMullen of Eagles on SI, Ojomo could reach over $20 million per year in average annual value if he keeps developing at the same pace. So the question every Eagles fan should be asking right now is this: who stays and who goes? And that answer could determine the fate of Philadelphia's competitive window while Jalen Hurts is still under contract. Roseman, given his track record, will want a ready-made answer before losing either player to free agency for nothing. And the smartest way to prepare for that scenario is exactly what Bleacher Report is suggesting. Draft the potential replacement now in 2026, a full year before the decision becomes truly urgent. Think about what that kind of roster management actually looks like in practice. Roseman drafts Miller in the 2nd or 3rd round in 2026. Miller spends his first season rotating behind Davis, Carter, and Ojomo, learning the system, developing his body, absorbing Fangio's scheme. By the time 2027 arrives and Philadelphia has to make the hard call between Carter and Ojomo, Miller is no longer a raw rookie. He's a second-year player with a full season of NFL reps under his belt, ready to step into a larger role without the team skipping a beat. That is precisely the kind of forward-thinking roster architecture that has kept the Eagles competitive year after year, and it's a blueprint Roseman has executed successfully multiple times across this current Super Bowl window. Ballantyne also pointed to 2 other names beyond Miller as possible Eagles targets on the defensive line: Caleb Banks out of Florida and Zane Durant from Penn State. Each brings a distinct profile and a different potential fit within Philadelphia's defensive scheme, under coordinator Vic Fangio. But the Georgia pipeline, combined with the fact that Roseman has clearly built a trust relationship with that program and its development model, makes Miller the most natural name in the speculation conversation. It's also worth remembering that the Eagles absorbed real losses in the free agency cycle of this offseason. Josh Sweat and Milton Williams both left Philadelphia, creating immediate needs at the defensive end position. That could push Roseman to prioritize those spots before thinking about interior depth for the future. But Ballantyne's logic is precisely this: while the Eagles address the immediate holes at defensive end and linebacker, it may be smart to use a draft pick to get ahead of the Carter-Ojomo dilemma of 2027. The Georgia connection goes well beyond coincidence, my friend. 4 defensive players in 4 consecutive drafts is a statement of strategy. Roseman knows the program, trusts the players who come out of it, and understands that the Georgia system produces athletes who are ready to contribute quickly at the NFL level. When you combine that with a prospect ranked among the top 3 at his position by Kiper Jr. and a genuine strategic need in the medium term, the dots start connecting in a way that makes a lot of sense given how Philadelphia operates. The 2026 draft is right around the corner, and the decisions Roseman makes in the coming weeks will echo for years inside Lincoln Financial Field. With Jordan Davis locked in, but Carter and Ojomo hitting free agency in 2027, with losses at defensive end to cover in the short term, and with Georgia once again producing a defensive tackle with 1st or 2nd round potential, what would be the best strategy for the Eagles in this year's draft? Would you build the roster thinking about right now? Or would you already be placing the piece for the future? Drop your take in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back later to keep you updated with the latest Eagles news.